Ukraine, one of the biggest states of Europe. Its area is 603.7 thousand square kilometers. The country borders directly on 7 countries of the world. The total length of borders is 7,643 kilometers. Ukraine has a wide 2,590 kilometers access to the countries of Central and Western Europe. A favorable geographical location and a substantial potential make the national transport system crucial for social and economic development of the country.
Ukrainian government adopted a strategy of development of transportation infrastructure until 2020, which is now under the implementation. And the EU is here also to use skills, models, expertise, technological assets of the European Union to create with Ukrainian authorities a needed critical mass to implement the strategy. Therefore, I am here together with different colleagues from the delegation to help and to assist Ukrainian authorities to implement what has been decided as best tools, as best practices, best solutions for Ukraine.
An enormous potential the transport sector of Ukraine features originates from the favorable geographical location of the country and its transit capabilities. However, these advantages are not used at a full scale. The reason is rolling stock and transport infrastructure becoming more and more obsolete. It is more and more difficult for Ukrainian transport to meet the European requirements. The present-day indicators of quality and performance of transportation, energy efficiency, safety, and anthropogenic pressure on the environment determine the trends the transport sphere of Ukraine should follow.
Transport already has a high economical importance for Ukraine. 11.5% of the country's GDP are done in transport. 8% of the people working are working in transport. This shows that transport can really be a locomotive of the country's progress. Ukraine is eager to make that progress. Ukraine is eager to make a quantum leap in economic terms, to close the gap to the most developed nations. Transport will help Ukraine to achieve this goal. The European Union is ready and happy to help Ukraine in this task.
To improve the transport system efficiency, the transport strategy for Ukraine up to 2020 program was adopted. The program was developed by the Ministry for Infrastructure of Ukraine with technical assistance provided by the European Union project, support to the integration of Ukraine in the Trans-European Transport Network (TNT). Today, it is being implemented with the involvement of EU-funded projects support the transport strategy of Ukraine.
The priority of the work of the EU delegation in Ukraine is to help Ukraine develop its transport system and bring it up to speed and up to the standards that we enjoy in the European Union. Cooperation with Ukraine will lead to Ukraine upgrading its transport system. This will mean practical improvements for all of Ukrainian citizens.
Ukraine needs a developed transport system. It largely determines the growth of competitiveness for economy and quality of life for people. The sector modernization may substantially accelerate the development of national economy. Though, considering the actual situation in the sector and the scope of tasks to be solved, this would be a complicated process.
I guess the biggest problem is the current stage of the infrastructure in Ukraine. So This is probably the big obstacle, that the needed level of money, of investments is so big that we have to create also big instrument to address properly this issue.
Transport infrastructure assets that need investing constitute now a public property and depend on budget funding. With limited availability of financial resources, it is necessary to settle cooperation between the public and private sectors and to find new funding procedures. This requires improving the regulative and legal framework, adopting and finalizing a number of relevant laws, and implementation of current European experience is of particular significance here. Within the Support to Transport Strategy of Ukraine project, the European Union provides Ukraine with the technical assistance for developing the regulative and legal network the sector needs for development.
We work to create better conditions for financing infrastructure, for improved planning, for identifying priority projects. We support and share our know-how, how to privatize the projects, how to find the financing, how to make good pre-feasibility studies to make sure that the right projects are implemented at the right time.
The most ambitious projects set forth by the transport strategy should integrate Ukraine into the EU transport networks and develop the transport service market.
Cooperation in transport area between the European Union and Ukraine is absolutely crucial. We have a project of moving closer, of being stronger together. Transport can be and should be the key motor of getting closer, establishing links, and facilitating exchanges. This will benefit our economy. Goods should move freely, quicker, safer, and with lower cost across the borders, and people should be able to have access to a high quality, secure and safe service, and should be able to use the means of transport to get closer together.
Ukraine is located on trans-European transport corridor directions that compose the central and northern transport axis. The territory of Ukraine stretches within the Black Sea trans-European transport zone that makes a priority for development. Integration of the transport system of Ukraine into the trans-European network is a crucial task. For its sake, an ambitious reform that has involved all components of the national transport infrastructure is being implemented.
In most sectors of transport of Ukraine, railways, aviation, maritime, Ukraine still has to undergo major reforms. And I should confirm that they have started and are on good track.
Let me start with the road sector. The road sector in Ukraine faces huge challenges. It is a very big country. Ukraine is the largest country entirely on European territory. It is twice the size of Italy. It is almost 3 times the size of the United Kingdom. And it has few inhabitants. Inevitably, this means that distances are very large. And this poses a significant challenge for road transport in Ukraine.
Ukraine needs the development of public roads. Therefore, the strategy provides for the construction of new roads and development of existing ones. What is very important is to bring the operation condition in line with increasing demands on traffic density and weight loads. Accident dangerous sections on the road should be removed and traffic capacity should be increased, in particular at approaches to big cities, seaports and state border crossing checkpoints.
Ukraine has one of the richest network of open waters in Europe, and this is probably something to focus on. With an access to the sea, the water transport can be a fantastic tool for transporting goods.
18 sea commercial ports are located in Ukraine. In the Black Sea, Sea of Azov and Danube basins, the length of inland waterways at the major European rivers, the Danube and the Dnieper, amounts to 2.2 thousand kilometers. The seaports are key transport system points for foreign trade. Quality and amount of transport services exported, competitiveness rate of national goods at the world market depend on their performance. But as to quality and technical parameters, the seaports of Ukraine have remained at the level of late 80s, early 90s.
Ports and waterways. Ukraine has a potential that is not yet fully used. We all know that water transport is a very efficient way of transport. It does not consume much energy. It can be very environmentally friendly. Yet, at this moment, we see that the sector is still underdeveloped in Ukraine, both in terms of maritime transport and inland waterway transport.
The maritime and river transport is developing further towards technical and technological modernization of maritime transport in line with international standards and requirements to ports, reforming of maritime transport management system, improvement of navigation safety and provision on environmental safety, innovative development and build-up of national human potential. This strategy prioritizes restoration of inland water transport and development of the Dnieper at north-south trans-European axis, with this integration into the all-European inland waterway system. The implementation of these projects are being currently funded from budget of Ukraine as well as out of funds of Ukrainian maritime sector enterprises and financial institutions concerned, including European ones.
Railway. Ukraine is on the path of a major reform of its railway infrastructure. Railway is essential for the country's cohesion, also given the country's size. It is of paramount importance. Ukraine has started on a process of major reform of its rail sector, and the EU supports Ukraine in this big task.
As to the length of railways, Ukraine is the second in Europe, 21.7 thousand kilometers of railways. However, its potential may be realized at principally higher level of management. This is achieved through improving the traffic operation process, upgrading and developing the infrastructure, renewing the rolling stock. For instance, a challenging problem of splitting the network of passenger-dominating and freight-dominating traffic lines, as well as increasing passenger train traffic periodicity, is on pipeline. A major part of reforms is also aimed at building and developing a competitive transport service market. Ukraine can use the experience of those European countries that reform their railways.
Aviation may also be a very fast developing sector. It is growing in Europe by almost 5 to 10% every year, and it will help also to not only connect Ukraine with outside world, but to connect Ukraine with Ukraine. Ukraine is a big country where aviation plays still a role for internal transportation and for internal mobility.
Ukrainian air transport system is on the way to integrate into the all-European one. To implement the single sky concept in Ukraine, air navigation charging system has been facilitated according to Eurocontrol requirements. All district air traffic control centers have been automated. A number of actions have been implemented that have made airspace of Ukraine open for all its users. The next step would be integration into the common air area that provides for adaptation of air service economic regulation system to the European laws. A network of airports has been on development today, and an aircraft fleet is being renewed. Ukraine obtained a huge experience of air infrastructure upgrading in the course of preparing to European Football Championship 2012. In the future, the transport sphere should provide affordable and high-quality services for all social groups in line with high social standards. Given a national trend to urbanization and intensified development of big cities, a priority would be to develop urban and suburban transport network and to accelerate the development of public passenger transport.
This is still one of the main means of transportation for people in Ukraine. How to preserve its accessibility because of very low prices in Ukraine with a comfort and security. If you look at marshrutkas, you ask yourself, was it safe to jump on? Every year, 1 small city in Ukraine disappears because of all people who are injured or dead on roads and streets in Ukraine. Let us work in order to save people's life on the streets and roads in Ukraine.
Transport safety is a huge challenge for Ukraine. Last year alone, there were 5,000 deaths on Ukrainian roads, and 40,000 people were injured. Each of them is too much.
Within the Support for Transport Strategy project, a pilot project on road safety was implemented. It was held in Donetsk to attract the attention of the public to safety issues and to coordinate activities of public activists and state bodies directly responsible for preventing the road transport accidents. NGO volunteers, local authorities, state bodies, students and professors of sector higher educational establishments were involved into the project. The project included audit of city roads and information and communication campaign. A particular attention was paid to Donetsk schools, where dedicated actions were carried out together with road traffic police inspectors. Children were ensuring the level and standards required to manage road traffic accident risks and to prevent their occurrence to the road safety issue. The events planned within the project will be focused on the safety of pedestrians and cyclists as the most vulnerable group of road users. Children were handed colorful gifts designed and made within the EU project, books on road safety rules, bags and arm bandages with light reflective elements.
Recommendations could be focused mostly on using proper fuel and modernizing especially car sector in Ukraine. It's enough to walk in Ukrainian streets to see what is the air we have to respire with.
Transport creates a significant anthropogenic load on the environment, accounting for the third part of all hazardous substances emitted in Ukraine. First of all, this refers to road transport in the cities, where share in pollutant emissions reaches 90%.
It is necessary to rethink the approach to ecological issues. One should not come at a late stage and think what can be remedied in environmental terms. It's necessary to think right from the start how to bring about in a new project the compatibility with environmental requirements. That is the reason why we strongly promote environmental impact assessment for all major infrastructure projects.
To improve the environmental safety level, the transport strategy of Ukraine, for instance, provides for a proper attention to be paid to environmental protection and reasonable use of natural resources, for designing and building roads, and a stage-by-stage transfer to the direct application of international environmental standards.
Transport is one of the branches which consumes a lot of energy, and the cheapest energy is the non-spent energy. So let us focus also how to economize spendings on energy in the domain of transport.
Implementation of interventions specified by the transport strategy is to reduce transport energy consumption by 10–20%. This should happen through promoting use of alternative engine fuels, compressed natural gas and biofuel, developing energy-efficient modes of transport. Ukraine has been participating at the European Sustainable Energy Week for the last 3 years. In July 2013, within the Support for Transport Strategy project, events dedicated to promote the use of alternative fuels were held in Ukraine. An eco-motor race was organized along the roads of the country, with the cars running on the fuel with bioadditives. They became an example to demonstrate advantages of alternative fuels and to show all aspects of its practical use.
Second priority, not less important, is the improvement of the administrative capacity of the Ukrainian government and its institutions and administrations. Not less important is the capacity of the administrations of Ukraine to implement the priorities which are set. So it's not only the daily work of the ministries, other institutions and agencies, it's the improving the qualifications of the people and their capacity to work better and more.
Tasks Ukraine is facing make to work intensively on reform human resources factor. It may be reached also through sharing experience and best practices with European countries.
One of the most interesting and rewarding parts of my work here is that it allows me to bring people together. For instance, the European Union finances a number of twinning projects. These twinning projects bringing colleagues from the Ukrainian administration and bring them together with colleagues from EU administrations. Colleagues from Poland and Spain are working together with Ukrainian colleagues on railway reform issues. Colleagues from France are working with Ukrainian colleagues on multimodal transport issues. And colleagues from Sweden and Spain are working on aviation issues, and it is always a big pleasure to see cultures meet, know-how exchanged, and the groundwork laid for future development and understanding.
The European experience is presented in the transport strategy provisions as a fundamental document that determines the sector future. The strategy must be implemented through practical actions of transport experts. The reform trends and contents are of particular importance for the future sector staffing, and this is why the support to Transport Strategy of Ukraine project delivered lectures for transport students of higher educational establishments of the country. A student essay contest dedicated to the future of Ukrainian transport became a success, and its winner visited Brussels and the European Commission headquarters. Challenges the sector is going through are so material that have an impact on the everyday life of most Ukrainians. This requires a particular attention to be paid to the information and communication support of the reforms being implemented. The European Union gives the highest priority to the projects aimed at supporting the transport strategy implementation. The scope of one of these projects included an information exhibition dedicated to the transport sector of Ukraine. Within the project framework, the exhibition traveled throughout Ukraine. It stopped at major transport junctions and informed the Ukrainians on main transport infrastructure components, principal aspects of reforming and its progress. The exhibition addressed the public of Ukraine, then users of transport services. Its primary result is a new level of Ukrainians' awareness, understanding of scales and significance of changes taking place. The exhibition presented also a role of the EU-Ukraine cooperation in implementing the current reforms.
I love working in Ukraine. It is a highly interesting work. It is a rewarding work. Immediately, when coming to Ukraine, one sees the huge potential that Ukraine has, that Ukrainian citizens have, and it's a pure pleasure to be able to help.
The work is very challenging, very interesting, and there's always very interesting to see a huge possibilities for improvements.